Hey y'all, can you hear me? Type one if you can hear me. I see we have some early risers up in here. Hey Abu Bakar, we got Adrian up in here. Tracism, who is that? Alice, Alice B up in the house. Contemplating Key, a young soul. Thanks for joining me on this lovely, what is it, Tuesday afternoon. Still the afternoon time for me. I don't know what time it is in your part of the world, but yeah. So unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to go live this past weekend because I was dealing with some serious swelling, and I'm still kind of dealing with swelling. So this whole recovery process, again, you never know how the day is going to go. Every day is different. You just be going through these ups and downs. And I have like 3 Jupiter transits becoming exact this month. And with Jupiter being in Pisces, that can deal with swelling, water retention, shit like that. Hey, Karmic Life. Hey, Nurse Tara. Hey, Ex Girl. Hey, Dr. Ken. We got Sadie up in the house. But yeah, so it's like about 3 Jupiter transits. So Jupiter is making a semi square with my Chiron today. Then Jupiter is going to make a quincunx with my Pluto. Then it's going to make a square to my Neptune. So I'm going through it with the swelling. And honestly, I was just thinking about this before I went live. I was like, honestly, to get plastic surgery, of course, some procedures are going to be real lightweight. But I'm saying to go through plastic surgery on the level I did, like with the tummy tuck, even just getting lipo, you got to be a little bit crazy. So I'm coming to terms with my level of craziness. You know that song? Remember that song by Seal? So we're never gonna survive unless we get a little crazy. Now I always could resonate with that song, and now it's starting to become really clear. I am a little crazy. Like you gotta be a little crazy to go through this. Cause it's like, number one, that was major surgery and it was elective. I chose to get this done, but I was so unhappy with the way I look. And this just shows you again my level of vanity. So unhappy with the way I look that I said I'd rather go through the suffering and the pain if it means that I'm going to look much better. So again, I'm just saying this is for people that are thinking about getting major surgery done, like cosmetically. I'm just, because I'm going to give y'all the real. I'm just letting y'all know, think long and hard because this shit is no joke. And it's not like I'm in tremendous pain or anything. It's just like the daily discomfort. It's more discomfort than anything. It's like the periods of swelling, it's the tightness. It is like you have some sore spots and stuff. And, let alone the part of my incision that came open, that's still healing. So again, I just say if you want to get something major done, like tummy tuck, lipo, BBL, which is Brazilian butt lift, or you want to get like either like nose job, or you want to get some fillers in your cheeks, even Botox, I would think, you just gotta be willing to suffer through it. And once you get it done, like there's no going back. You're at the point of no return. And that's where it's like I'm starting to really get in touch with my level of craziness. Now, I'm not saying I'm crazy like that. But again, you got to be kind of willing to be on the edge like that. So it's like, it's the same as when I look at people that have a lot of piercings and people that have a lot of tattoos. I look at them as a little crazy. Like, number one, you got to be, you must be a pain freak. That's how I look at people like that. Like you must get off on some level of pain. And a lot of people, that have a lot of tattoos and piercings, they do have some strong Scorpio energy in their charts. So I look at them as like the same way as people that get elective plastic surgery. Yeah, there must be something in you that wants that pain, or where you're willing to go through the pain in order to get that reward. But it's the same as like bodybuilders. Bodybuilders, they go through so much pain and agony just to have a certain look. And all of that is Scorpio as well. The Capricorn influence deals with that too, in terms of just going through suffering and punishment just to achieve what you're trying to achieve. It's like climbing Mount Everest. Climbing Mount Everest, people that climb Mount Everest and these other mountains, they're crazy too. So if it's like something big that you want, something major transformation, sometimes you do got to get a little crazy to make it happen. So again, I'm coming to terms with my level of craziness. And they always say, like, people that do great things, they do have a little craziness in them. So yeah, this is part of my crazy. And I don't regret getting this surgery, but it's just like really letting me know, like, yo, this shit is no joke. And for you to be able to like just go with it and do it, that's just letting you know, number one, how dissatisfied I was with myself, and number two, how I am willing to go out on a limb and do some crazy shit to get to where I want to be in life. So yeah, that's just my little take on it. And again, for those that are considering getting major surgery, I just want to let you know this is no joke. It's not a walk in the park. Even if you don't have any complications, just the recovery process alone can take time. It requires you to be patient. It requires you to be more conscious of your body, because your body will tell you when it's time to rest. Your body will tell you when you're doing too much. Your body will start to protest and all that type of stuff. So yeah, I just want to let everybody, and I'm not trying to dissuade people from getting the work done, but you just got to be willing to suffer through the recovery process and the pain. And I know some of y'all been through it before, whether you had involuntary surgery or voluntary surgery. Just healing from surgery is just no joke. So Sadie, you said you're getting hip surgery. Well, good luck to you. I hope that you recover quickly and not too painless, not where you're not in too much pain. Let's see who else is up in here. But yeah, like I said, throughout this recovery process, I want to be as real with y'all as possible. So I don't want to be one of those people that act like, oh yeah, this shit is a walk in the park. And you can hear the way I'm talking. I'm not even in pain. It's just discomfort. But again, you have to be willing to go through this discomfort day in and day out until your body just gets to a point. Hey, Esperanza, where your body just gets to a point where it's like, okay, now you've healed. Now the swelling is basically over. And they say that it could take 6 months to a year before the swelling fully subsides, and where you really are, left with the finished product. So this is a long-term project, basically, that I've gotten myself into. And I am at that point of no return. It's like I already got the surgery. And now that I'm looking back, the first 3 weeks, those were the easiest. Because number one, your body's still all numbed up. And what I'm realizing now is that my nerves, more of my nerve endings are starting to become reborn, you could say. They're starting to become alive. And that's why I'm starting to feel like the soreness and the swelling even more like intensely. So yeah, it's a work in progress. Hey, Dana. Dana said, have you seen the new show on Lifetime about plastic surgery nightmares hosted by K. Michelle? Oh, wow, I got to check that out. Oh, I hope there's some clips on YouTube. And it's interesting that she's hosting it because, she had some nightmares dealing with plastic surgery. Don't listen to them say you're very tough for going through it. I'm way too squeamish. Yeah, so if you know you're squeamish, I would say, yeah, don't even do it, because you might really end up regretting it. You might be like, what did I get myself into? Because again, once you get the surgery, it's like there's no going back. You already did it, and now you just are left with the recovery process. Hey, Siobhan. Siobhan said I might be able to deal with this shootout before I could put that garb on every night. And I'll tell you how I've been feeling lately. So it does feel like, I'll say, before I started with the swelling over the past few days, and again, it's due to these Jupiter transits that I'm going through, it was like I was feeling like more numb. And now it's like I really feel like, yeah, the doctor done cut me open. That's how I feel like. Like I'm really starting to really feel that, like, it's not even like pain. It's just like this soreness and this pressure and this tightness. And sometimes if you like really dwell on that, I feel like you could go a little crazy. So I'm glad that I have y'all. I'm glad that I have my daughter, my other two kids, they be checking in on me and stuff, other family members and stuff. So I'm glad that I have that support system, because I can't imagine somebody going through any type of major surgery, whether it's voluntary or involuntarily, alone. I can't imagine. Like, this is a time where you really need a support system, not just on the physical level, but on the mental level. Because again, if you sit here and you really dwell on the discomfort, and if you feel like, okay, there may never be an end to this, you could go a little crazy. I could see how somebody that's in like a horrible way physically could be driven to, basically end their life. And I'm not saying I'm nowhere near that type of train of thought, but just experiencing this discomfort on a daily basis, I understand how people who deal with chronic pain could get to the point where they just want to end their life. Because yeah, it's like you're stuck with it, and all you could do is just try to minimize it the best you can. But yeah, it could be absolutely agonizing on a physical level and mental level. Hey, Cameron said, I think the end result is so important, it justifies the means or the work it takes to get there. No fail mission, I agree. And again, I voluntarily signed up for this. I knew what I was getting into, and honestly, I would say the recovery process is still easier than what I thought. But I'll just say that I overestimated my own self in terms of me being strong, in terms of like recovering. Ellie said bodybuilders' articulations are so fucked up when they're older. Sometimes they end up in wheelchairs. Like Ronnie Coleman. Ronnie Coleman is a perfect example. He was like like 6 or 7 time Mr. Olympia champion bodybuilder. And now he has to walk with crutches. He's had like multiple back surgeries. And again, he put himself through all that. Like, he tortured himself basically to achieve that look. So, if we looked at his chart, I'm sure we would see something where it could cause him to be a little crazy as well, going to the extremes. The Perfect Escape said, can you tell in the birth chart if your recovery will be successful? I want breast surgery. Yeah, basically you can tell if, your surgery overall will be successful. Now, in terms of the recovery process, that's where you really want to look at transits, progressions. And of course, I've been tracking my own transits and progressions, and I can see everything going down. Like I said, this swelling that I'm experiencing right now, which seems like the worst it's ever been, is coinciding with these 3 Jupiter transits I have becoming exact this month. So I know that that's the beauty of astrology, because I know when it's going to start to dissipate, like the energy of these transits. So I can see ahead, like when I'm going to start feeling better. And Uranus is making a trine with my ascendant at the end of this month, which can result in me like feeling like I'm improving even more. My swelling will probably go down by the end of the month. So just being able to look at your transits can give you an idea of how you're going to recover, how you're going to fare. Ali said, yes, surgery is not a joke, a miracle remedy, or anything small. Also, there's always complications. The IG baddies have skewed people's mind when it comes to surgery. Yeah, really. Don't listen to them. Said the only surgery I had done with for wisdom teeth extractions, it was so painful. My face was so swollen, it grew 2 sizes bigger. Now, I'm very familiar with pain, which could be another reason why I agreed to get this done. Hey, Akeda. So yeah, I've had 3 children, vaginally, all natural, never had an epidural. So just going through natural childbirth alone, where you don't have no drugs. Well, with my first daughter, they had shot me up with some Demerol, but that was like when I was in the early stages of labor, and it was because I was still really young. I guess they shot me up. But when I was actually in like that serious hard labor, I remember I asked, they were like, do you want an epidural? And I was like, yeah. And then next thing you know, they're telling me it's too late. It's not enough time for an epidural, and I just got to go for it. So all 3 of my children were like that. Actually, with my son, I didn't even have time to ask for an epidural. Instead, he came out as soon as I got on the table. And a lot of times, if you've had like 2 or more children, those latter children, they just slip out because you already primed to give birth. But yeah, having 3 children naturally, Yeah, I'm very familiar with pain. I've had 3 of my wisdom teeth extracted. I had like 2 other teeth extracted. Horrible. I've had a horrible root canal before that was hella painful. So yeah, I'm very familiar with pain. I've been beat up like I was a man by a man. That now, okay, I'll tell y'all this. Getting beat up by a man, I would say, is more painful than what I'm going through right now. So that ought to tell you something. I've been punched in the eye by a man before. I had a big ass black eye. So I'm used to going through pain. I'm used to like suffering on a physical level. So yeah, compared, and I'm not even talking about the time I got beat like I was a man where I got punched in the eye. No, this other time I'm getting like body shots by a man. Like he beating me like I'm in a boxing ring with him. That hurt more than the surgery. So again, I'm familiar with pain. I'm used to it, but again, it's more so like going through this chronic type of situation. Yeah. Now, with that being said, I know a lot of y'all already saw my video about Yummy, the little kid, and I just wanted to just talk about that real quick before we get into Will Smith's book. And we only got 66 people up in here anyway, so I'll wait till the room fills up. But I did want to just touch on what there was a couple of people who made comments on the video, and they seemed quite bothered by the fact that people were saying, well, because I had asked a question in that video. I was like, was this like Yummy's karma? Was this his karmic debt to have to live a life like that and have a tragic ending like that? Or was this more so a hard lesson for people to learn, whether it was a hard lesson for his family to learn or a hard lesson just for people in general? So some people really, took it the wrong way, I think, with people saying that it could have been his karmic debt, because I think they just don't understand how like things work on a spiritual level if you want to talk about karma. Now, number one, karma is basically cause and effect. What you do has an effect. That's basically what karma is. Karma could be good, it could be bad. So if we're talking about karmic debt, usually we are implying that there was something that the person did in a past life to warrant their circumstances in this current life. And a lot of times, this is how I'll say this is basically the best way to explain why bad things happen to innocent people, why horrific things happen to children. And of course, children are innocent. If you want to look at it as children in terms of here and now, physical children, not when you're taking the soul into account. If you're just looking at children on a purely physical level, all children are innocent, right? Because children, they don't know better. You have to teach them right from wrong and all of that type of stuff. Now, some people do believe psychopaths are born. That's another story. But basically, what I'm getting at is once you add the spiritual to it and you talk about souls, and if you believe in reincarnation, and if people believe that the soul is eternal, then on the spiritual level, there's really no such thing as age, is there? Like age is just an illusion, just like you could say time is an illusion. So if the soul is eternal, and if we're talking about Yummy in particular, yeah, he got murdered at 11 years old. Yeah, he was abused since he was a little toddler. But if we're talking about the soul level and with the soul being eternal, or maybe, there's different ages of souls, but it's all eternal at the end of the day. Maybe his soul is thousands of years old or hundreds of years old. You've heard of the term old soul. So again, when we're dealing with the spiritual world, we have to kind of put aside things that are rigidly fundamental on a material level, such as ages. So again, to me, it's the most compassionate way to explain why bad things happen to good people and why bad things happen to little children who are innocent if we're thinking in terms of just the material plane. Of course, they're innocent. Of course, they don't deserve to go through this. But if we're looking at things from a lens of the soul, then maybe yes, maybe there was something they did in a past life that would warrant the circumstances in this current lifetime. So that's how you have to look at it. And you have to separate the soul from the human being experiencing that at that point in time. And to me, that's the best way to make sense of why these horrific things happen to these little children. And again, sometimes you also have to ask yourself, was this a situation where, again, was this a hard lesson for the parents? Or was this a hard lesson for everybody in general to basically say, okay, this is what you shouldn't do? In order for us to understand right from wrong, wouldn't we need examples? To even understand the concept between right and wrong, there always has to be some wrong, right? And Siobhan, you touched on this in the comment section about how there has to be darkness if there's light. And you were saying something like you think all souls have to go through these basically lifetimes of like pain versus pleasure or something like that. I know I'm just paraphrasing what you said, but yeah, you touched on that. And I think that's what we have to really just come to terms with, how things really are on a soul level, universal level as well. But yeah, it was a very sad story. But I'm going to be doing more videos about kids that end up with these horrible fates and how they basically either take a wrong turn in life, and show you in their chart like what creates that. So one of the people that had a problem with people talking about karma, they brought race into it. And they were saying that, oh, y'all never give black kids a break or whatever like that. But little did they know is I have another video that I'm going to be doing about two little white kids. And I'm going to be asking the same question. Was this little white boy that got murdered at 4 years old, was that his karmic debt? Or was this a hard lesson for people around him to learn? Was it a hard lesson for his killer, who was another kid, to learn? And this is one of the most gruesome stories I've ever heard about a kid murdering another kid. But yeah, it spans race, nationality, ethnicity, what have you. So I don't like how some people will try to, pull the race card and make it seem like, nah, people are, saying that it was his karma because he's black and all that. Nah, it wasn't. I don't think nobody was, putting race into it like that. But anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest because, yeah, I think some people just don't understand the concept of karma and how reincarnation works and all that type of stuff. Okay, let's see what y'all got to say about that. And then we'll segue over into Will Smith because I know that's what most of y'all showed up for. Patricia, hey Patricia, you said some people are out here to cause chaos, destruction, and turmoil. Look at Ted Bundy and Richard Ramirez. Exactly. Akeda said, I had a lady do a black magic ritual on me around 5 years old. Definitely heavy karma. Okay, so you're saying that you were born with some heavy karma. Cameron says, a spiritualist, you have to ponder and contemplate the rhyme and reason for the really difficult experiences in life some of us can be forced to deal with in our lifetimes. Exactly. What else? Don't listen to them said his fellow gang members killed him so he wouldn't rat them out once the cops caught him for his botched hit job. Exactly. And I really just look at these gang members, or especially the leaders of the gangs. I feel like the police could have did more in terms of taking down these leaders of the gangs to try to, prevent other little kids from getting caught up in the system. But I don't know, maybe these gangs be paying off the police. Maybe that's how these gangs are able to proliferate and continue to destroy their communities. But yeah, I feel like the whole investigation was botched because it seemed like the investigation just stopped at Yummy being murdered. Why didn't the police go after the leaders of this gang, the Black Disciples? They knew the Black Disciples ordered that hit. And they had those brothers do it who were teenagers at the time. Why didn't the police, why didn't the detectives, Why didn't the FBI go after the leaders of the Black disciples? That's what I want to know. And that's how you know. I don't even like to, say it's all the system, because people are responsible for their own behavior and actions. But you have to admit that this system is heavily flawed, and it contributes to the proliferation of crime, especially murder, especially in the Black community. They don't, from what my understanding, they rarely conduct proper investigations to really try to stamp out these criminals. And it's like a revolving door system. Again, like I was saying, you know how many times they let that yummy out and basically let him continue to run wild? This boy, he had 23 felonies. Where are the programs in place to try to rescue young people that are headed towards a life of destruction? And again, I'm not saying all the responsibility falls into the system's hands or the government, but damn it, if they act like they care so much, which is all basically some phony shit to me, then they would really do something to try to thwart this. And again, my question is, why didn't they go after the leaders of the Black disciples? X-Girl said, it's a lot of Chicago kids you could do videos on. Yeah, I just learned about another one. Don't listen to them. Said they have a vested interest in gangs. Everyone has a part to play, even gangs. Well, it sure seems that way. It really does. Abu said they definitely put a hit out on him. Mm-hmm. Yup. But again, they put these young teenagers up to do it. You notice how because they said the leaders of the Black disciples, they were in their 30s and 40s, but they're having the younger ones do their dirty work. Talk about coward. Now, Will Smith was calling himself a coward, speaking about Will Smith, and we about to segue over into this book. Interesting how Will Smith was calling himself a coward, but in my opinion, the true cowards are these leaders of these gangs that get these young kids to do their dirty work. That's the definition of a true coward, if you ask me. Siobhan said, let's not get into the charts of some of these corrupt cities, right? Y'all hear about that mayor of Baltimore? No, she wasn't the mayor. She was the state attorney. And she got caught not embezzling funds, but it was like some fraud stuff. A lot of these politicians are going to continue to go down with this Scorpio South Node transit. All right, now with that being said, let's get into this book. Now, I do want to do a little recap because this book is really touching me, especially the part where Will Smith is talking about he's a coward. I really think it was big of him to really start the book off with this self-reflection like this. So one of the things I just wanted to stress again about Will Smith, and let me just pull up his chart. Actually, before I pull up his chart, I'm going to pull up a picture of Will Smith and his daddy so y'all can put a face to the craziness. Because you can see that his father was rather unhinged with this picture. Okay, so that's Will Smith's father. That's Daddy-O, y'all. So, Daddy-O, he was hell on wheels. And I kind of feel for Will that he had to endure that abuse at the hands of his father and how he was in this constant state of fear. Now, him having this, this feeling of guilt and regret where his mother is concerned, that points to him having cancer on the third house cusp. So the third house, that's your mind, your conscious mind, that's dealing with your thoughts. So, that's like his mom was on his mind quite a bit. And then he had that Scorpio moon conjoined to Neptune in the sixth house. That's creating this feeling of guilt, this feeling of regret. Again, I told you with that Scorpio moon, that's like him witnessing the abuse of his mother. And then with it being conjoined to Neptune, that's him wishing he could have saved his mother, wishing he could have been her savior when she was getting beat by the father. Also, he was talking about how he was a coward and how he always wanted to be the one that would keep the peace. And he was like basically the entertainer. So him wanting to keep the peace, again, that reinforces those nodes. Let me just pull up his chart. Reinforces those nodes being at the 9th degree of Libra, 9th degree of Aries. That 9th degree reinforces the Aries theme. Let me just pull up his chart. That 9th degree is about conflict. It's about aggression. It's about assertiveness. It's about manliness, masculinity. So when you look at the 9th degree of Libra, that's basically Will Smith admitting that, yeah, he was a pacifist, because that South Node is dealing with where he's coming from. So he's coming from a position of being a pacifist, which is that Libra South Node. And then he wants to get over to the part Aries North Node, which is him being a warrior. So when you have the Aries North Node, yeah, you have to cultivate that warrior spirit within you. You have to stand up for yourself and possibly even stand up for others. You have to learn how to use those hands at some point. But yeah, with him having that strong Libra influence, his sun being conjoined to the South Node in Libra in particular, he had a hard time rising to the challenges of that Aries North Node when he was younger. And he basically was assuming the role of the pacifist. Then you can see the pacifist issue being echoed through his chart ruler, which is Mercury. His Mercury in Libra, that's his chart ruler. Libra is the sign of the pacifist. And to make matters worse, his Mercury was conjoined to Venus, reinforcing the pacifist. And then it's opposing his Saturn in Aries, representing his father, and how his father instilled this fear in him, which caused him to become more of a pacifist. Because he said all he wanted to do was please his father so that his father wouldn't be upset all the time. So you can basically see that what Will Smith is writing in his book can be verified in his chart. Now, with that being said, let's get into chapter 2. Now, chapter 2 is called Fantasy. Now, I have to warn y'all, I might not be able to get through this whole chapter if it's long, because if I start to swell up or if I got to pee, I'm going to have to cut it short. So hopefully I'll be able to get through the whole thing. All right, chapter 2, Fantasy. Now, I know y'all were thinking I was going to start this book off with okay, let me just start. Okay, here we go. Let me just restart this because I didn't realize I was going to have to quote something right away. Okay. He said, now, I know y'all were thinking I was going to start this book off with in West Philadelphia, born and raised, not with stories of domestic abuse and violence. And yeah, I wasn't ready for it, Will. I was tempted. I mean, how could I not be? I'm a make-believer. Him being a make-believer, that's his moon being conjoined to Neptune, moon ruling that third house. I'm a movie star. That also points to that moon being conjoined to Neptune, the film career. My first impulse is always to clean up the truth in my mind, to make it better, to shine it up a little bit so it doesn't hurt as much. I redesign it and replace it with whatever suits me, or really whatever suits you. I'm a crowd pleaser. That's his Mercury conjoined to Venus in Libra, with Mercury ruling his chart, him being a crowd pleaser. All right, where are we at? Okay. It's my actual job. The truth is whatever I decide to make you believe, and I will make you believe it. That's what I do. Interesting, because I was really dwelling on the fact that he got Sagittarius on the 7th. So that's basically him pointing to the truth is whatever I will make you believe it. Interesting. He calls himself a master storyteller. So he said, I'm a master storyteller. Storyteller that comes from that Cancer on the 3rd. I thought about showing you the pretty me, a flawless diamond, a swaggy, unbreakable winner, a fantasy image of a successful human being. I'm always tempted to make believe. I live in an ongoing war with reality. Interesting. Again, Moon conjunct Neptune in the sixth house. Of course, there's the red carpet walking, fly car driving, tight fade wearing, box office record breaking, hot chick marrying, I am legend, pulling up, doing jiggy ass Will Smith. And then there's me. This book is about me. In West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground is where I spent most of my days, chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool. I got my ass beat and bullied every day after school. That's how the song should have gone. Okay, I can admit I was a weird kid. Kind of skinny, sort of goofy, with a bizarre taste in clothes. I was also the unfortunate owner of a prominent set of ears that made David Brandon once say that I looked like a trophy. As I think back, I probably would have made fun of me too. It didn't help that I liked math and science. They were my favorite subjects in school. I think I like math because it's exact. I like when things add up. Numbers don't play games or have moods or opinions. Him liking numbers and math, that's very much Gemini rising. And I talked a lot, Gemini rising. Probably too much, Gemini rising. And having Cancer on the third can make him very long winded. But most important, I had a wild and vivid imagination. That's his moon conjoining to Neptune, Cancer on the third. A fantasy life that was much broader and lasted way longer than most children. Whereas when most kids just played around with plastic army men, Nerf balls, and toy guns, I would construct elaborate fantasy scenarios and then get lost in them. Again, Moon could join to Neptune with the moon ruling that third house, him getting lost in fantasy, these fantasy scenarios. When I was about 8 or 9, my mom sent me and Pam to Sayre Morris Day Camp in Southwest Philadelphia. I say this happened when he was 9 because of that ninth degree South Node, ninth degree North Node. It was the usual bargain basement thing, rec room, swimming pool, arts and crafts. I came home after the first day and ran into the kitchen where my mom was sitting with our next door neighbor, Miss Frida. Hey, baby, how was camp? My mom asked. Oh, Mom, I loved it. They had this big jazz band with trumpets and violins and singers and drums, and they had one of those horn things that do like this. I mimicked the back and forth movement of a trombone. And then we had a dance battle, and like 50 people were doing choreographed moves together. Miss Frida looked at my mom. A full jazz band? 50 choreographed dancers? At a children's summer camp? What Miss Frida didn't know was that she was caught in the crossfire of a playful game between my mother and me, one that still goes on even to this day. Oh, this is deep, y'all. The rules are I describe the most colorful, vivid, outlandish scene that I could come up with, which I then superimpose over the reality of my actual experience. So his mom helped him to foster living in this fantasy world, which is very moon conjoined to Neptune in the sixth house, with the moon ruling that third house. Look at this. Interesting. So it says again, let me just read that part. The rules are I describe the most colorful, vivid, outlandish scene that I could come up with, which I then superimpose over the reality of my actual experience. And my mom's job is to determine how much of it is actually true, and in which case does she need to do something. My mom paused and came nose to nose with me. Her gaze served as a sort of old school mother wit lie detector, looking for the slightest wobble in my commitment to my story. I didn't flinch. She'd seen enough. Willard, stop playing. There was no jazz band at Sarah Day Camp. No, Mom, I'm telling you, it was crazy. Miss Frida, confused, said, But Carolyn, he didn't even know the word for a trombone. He had to have seen it, right? No, he does this mess all the time. Just then, Pam walked into the kitchen and my mother said, Pam, was there a full jazz band, a dance contest, and a trombone at camp today? Pam rolled her eyes. What? No, it was a jukebox, Mom. Will stood there and listened to the jukebox all day. He'd even get in the pool. My mom looked to Miss Frida. I told you. I burst into laughter. My mom won this round, but at least I beat Miss Frida. My imagination is my gift, and when it merges with my work ethic, I can make money rain from the heavens. My imagination has always been the part of me that my mom loved the most. Well, that and when I got good grades. It's a weird mix of love that she has for me. She loves my silly side, but she needs me to be smart. At some point in her life, she decided that she was only allowed to talk about important stuff: educational reform, generational wealth, the new misleading national health guidelines. She doesn't entertain foolishness. Her and Daddy O debated everything. Integration is the worst thing that ever happened to black folks, Daddy O said emphatically. You don't believe that, Will. You're just saying it to pluck my nerves, my mom said dismissively. Listen to me, Carolyn. Before integration, we had our own. Black businesses were driving because niggas had to patronize niggas. The cleaners, the restaurant, the hardware store. Everybody needed everybody. As soon as black folks was allowed to eat at McDonald's, our entire economic infrastructure collapsed. So are you saying that you prefer to be raising these children in slavery or in Jim Crow? My mom said. I'm suggesting that if there was a nigger water fountain, niggas would be getting hired to fix it. Mama would never say it to Daddy-O, but she would repeat all the time, never argue with a fool, because from a distance, people can't tell who's who. So when she would stop arguing with you, you knew what she thought of your position. When I say silly stuff, it makes the world lighter for her. But she needs me to say smart stuff too. That makes her feel safe. She thinks that the only way I'll be able to survive is if I'm intelligent. She likes about a 60-40 ratio of smart to silly. She's the best audience I've ever had. It's like there's some hidden part of her that even she's not aware of that's always egging me on. Come on, Will. Sillier, smarter, sillier, smarter. I like to hit her with stuff that on the surface is super silly, and I hide the smart under it to see if she can find it. I like the look on her face when she thinks something is just stupid. And then the smart part sneaks up on her. That's my favorite part too. Comedy is an extension of intelligence. It's hard to be really funny if you're not really smart. And laughter is my mom's medicine. In a way, I'm her little doctor. And the more she laughs, the more silly, smart, spectacular shit I make up. Again, him acting like he's his mother's doctor. Moon conjoined to Neptune in the sixth house. I think he going a little hard on his mother. Like he a little too attached. But that's very much Moon conjoined to Neptune in Scorpio. As a child, I would disappear into my imagination. I could daydream endlessly. There was nothing more entertaining to me than my fantasy worlds. There was a jazz band at camp. Now, the jazz band at camp, that's representing that Cancer on the 3rd with Moon conjoined to Neptune. So let me see. He said, I could daydream endlessly. There was nothing more entertaining to me than my fantasy worlds. There was a jazz band at camp. I heard the trumpets. I saw the trombone, the zoot suits, the big dance scene. The worlds that my mind created and inhabited were as real to me as real life, sometimes even more so. This constant stream of images and colors and ideas and silliness became my safe place. And then to be able to share that space, to be able to transport someone became the ultimate bliss. I love the ecstasy of a person's rapt attention, taking them on a roller coaster ride of their emotions, locked in harmony with my fantasy creation. For me, the border between fantasy and reality has always been thin and transparent, and I've been able to step in and out of each effortlessly. The problem is one man's fantasy is another man's lie. I developed a reputation in the neighborhood as a compulsive liar. That again, Moon conjoined to Neptune in Scorpio. The Scorpio part is the compulsive. The liar part is the Neptune influence upon his moon, with the moon ruling that third house. So yes, he was a compulsive liar, probably still is. My friends felt like they could never trust what I said. This is a strange quirk about me and even continues to this day. There it is. It's a running joke among my friends and family that you have to dial back my stories 2 or 3 notches to know what actually happened. Sometimes I'll tell a story and then a friend will look at Jada and say, okay, so what really happened? But as a child, what the other kids didn't understand was that I didn't lie about my perceptions. My perceptions lied to me. That's the perceptions, Scorpio. And I always say, Scorpio is very perceptive, but sometimes their perceptions can be wrong. So he's saying it right here where his perceptions would lie to him. I would get lost. Sometimes I would lose track of what was real and what I had made up. This is really speaking about Will Smith's mental health. And with his moon being conjoined to Neptune and Scorpio in the 6th house, moon ruling the 3rd house, this is basically a testament to his mental health. He got a little issues there. And this whole book is basically about this conjunction, moon conjoined to Neptune and Scorpio. All right, so where was I at? It became a defense mechanism. My mind wouldn't even contemplate what was true. I would think, what do they need to hear to be okay? But my mom got me. She delighted in my peculiarities. She made space for me to be as silly and creative as I could be. For instance, for much of my childhood, I had an imaginary friend named Magicker. Magicker, like magic, cur. Moon could join in Neptune in Scorpio. So he had an imaginary friend named Magic Kerr. Interesting. A lot of kids go through the imaginary friend phase, usually between 4 and 6 years old. Those imaginary friends are amorphous identities that don't really have any shape or personality. The imaginary friend wants whatever the child wants, hates what the child hates, and so on. It's made up to affirm the child's thoughts and feelings. But Magicker was different. Even as I write this book, the memory of Magicker is as vivid and resonant as any of the actual experiences of my childhood. He was a full-blown person. Magicker was a little white boy with red hair, fair skin, and freckles. He always wore a little powder blue polyester suit with a fire engine red bow tie. His pants rode just a little bit too high, exposing poorly chosen white socks. Whereas most other children's imaginary friends served as projections and affirmations, Magicker had distinct preferences and opinions about what games we should play and where we should go and what we should do. Sometimes he would disagree with me. Other times he'd make me go outside when I didn't want to. He had strong ideas about certain types of foods and the character of people in my life. Even as I'm sitting here recalling our relationship, I'm thinking, damn it, Magicker, this is my imagination. Magicker was such a significant presence in my childhood that my mom would sometimes set out a separate plate for him at the dinner table. And if she wasn't making any headway with me, she talked to Magicker instead. So mom basically acknowledged the fact that Will Smith was a little special. Okay, Magicker, are you ready to go to bed? Fortunately, this was the one thing that Magicker and I always agreed on. We were never ready to go to bed. A side effect of being lost in a fantasy life was that I had a lot of eccentric ideas about what was fly, fashionable, or funny. For example, I'm not sure how it developed, but I stumbled into an unfortunate, passionate cowboy boot phase. Man, I loved cowboy boots. In fact, I refused to wear anything else on my feet. I'd wear them with sweatsuits. I'd wear them with jeans. And isn't that interesting how he ended up playing in that movie Wild Wild West, where he was able to play like a cowboy and wear the cowboy boots? Even though I never saw that movie, but I just think that's very telling. So his dream of being a cowboy came true. Now, hell, I even wore them with shorts. Now, a black kid in West Philly in cowboy boots might as well just put a bullseye on his back. Kids would make fun of me and tease me mercilessly, but I didn't understand why. These boots are dope. And the more they laughed, the deeper my commitment to cowboy boots grew. I was always a bit of an oddball. Things that felt normal to me could seem strange to others, and things that other people celebrated sometimes didn't inspire me in the least. Back in the day, Huffy mountain bikes were on fire. Every kid wanted one. And one Christmas, all my friends on my block got together and we agreed to ask our parents for Huffy bikes that year. The plan was we would all ride our matching bikes to Marion Park, a small park just far enough outside of our neighborhood to feel like we were on adventure. Well, Christmas came and Santa made good on 10 brand new matching Huffies. Noon rolled around and everybody was out front. Everybody that is except me. See, I didn't ask for a Huffy. Huffies were for suckers. And they were about to witness what a real bike looked like. Because while they had all asked for stock standard run of the mill Huffy mountain bikes, I ain't no sheep. I had asked for a bright red Raleigh chopper. Choppers were those lowrider bikes with a big wheel in the back and a tiny wheel up front, with the handlebars that stuck way up in the air, with the 3-speed gear shift and an L bucket dragster saddle, aka the banana seat. They were like the Harley Davidson of kid bikes. You felt like you were on a motorcycle on that thing. It was the undisputed coolest bike on earth. Him harping on the bike, that's being a Gemini rising. I couldn't sleep the night before imagining my entrance. I had worked out my big reveal. Now, before I read on, I'm like, is he making this shit up? Is this in his head about this bike, this chopper? Like, did he really have a Huffy, but that moon conjoining Neptune and Mr. Magicer is making him believe that he got a chopper instead? Anyway, let me read on and see. I would wait for everybody to line up out front, ready to go, but I would come out from the back driveway, maintaining the element of surprise. I even planned to practice what I was going to say when they saw me on my chopper. What up, suckers? What y'all waiting for? Let's go. And then I'd just ride past them so they would have to catch up with me. Will Smith, the leader of the pack, the king of the neighborhood. The moment arrived, I had been watching them from behind the curtains in my living room. I could tell they were all waiting and wondering, where's Will at? And just then I rolled out from the driveway, handlebars scraping the heavens, pedaling smoothly in my cowboy boots. The Raleigh chopper first gear was butter. I was the man. I float on by, all eyes on me. I throw the nod, then hit them with the lineup, or with the line, what up, suckers? What y'all waiting for? Let's go. It was quiet for a few seconds. I figured I had them shook. Then I was nearly knocked off my chopper by the roar of laughter that emerged behind me. Teddy Allison literally laid on the ground laughing. Through his tears, he managed to say, "What the fuck is that, John?" I hit the brakes and turned to scan the rest of the crowd to see if Teddy was just busting or if he was speaking for everybody. "Nigga, are you in a biker gang?" said Danny Brandon. "You can't even see over them handlebars." Michael Barr said quietly, "This what happens when you go to white schools." But it didn't matter what they thought because to me, I was hot. That's one of the things about having an overactive imagination. I could make my mind believe anything. I was able to cultivate an almost delusional level of confidence. And while this was somewhat skewed perception of myself would often end in ridicule or getting my ass kicked when I was young, on many occasions throughout my life, it served as a superpower. When you are unaware that you shouldn't be able to do something, then you just do it. When my parents told me I couldn't be a rapper because there were no careers in hip hop, it didn't deter me because I knew parents just don't understand. When television producers asked me if I could act, I said, of course, even though I had never acted a day in my life. I thought, how hard can it be? When movie studios said they couldn't cast me because African American leads don't sell to international audiences, I wasn't necessarily offended. I just couldn't understand how a motherfucker that wrong could have this job. It wasn't just the racism that bothered me, it was the stupidity. People would tell me how I was supposed to be, and it just didn't make any sense. I felt like their rules didn't apply to me. Living in your own world with your own rules can be an advantage sometimes, but you have to be careful. You can't get too detached from reality because there are consequences. My consciousness was an infinite playground that I delighted in exploring. But when I was a kid, the benefits of my fantastical delusions were still far off in the future, and the consequences were front and center. Tolerance and open mindedness weren't the most common schoolyard virtues in West Philly. Kids could be cruel, and the more eccentric you are, the less mercy you will be shown. The playground is a hunting ground where every little boy is testing the limits of his own budding masculinity, attempting to prove himself as stronger and dominant, constantly flexing and challenging other boys, measuring himself against them, and punishing those weaker than himself. I was skinny and profoundly unathletic. My limbs and my torso had a sadly dysfunctional relationship. In addition, I had an overactive imagination, and from what the other kids could tell, I lied incessantly. All this meant that I was singled out by the other boys as an easy and justifiable target, which to prove their dominance, on which to prove their dominance. I got pushed around, picked last for games, hit and spit on. You name it, I got it. One day when I was probably 12 or 13 years old, a bunch of us were playing basketball in the schoolyard. I was fresh to death in my bright green shorts and my favorite cowboy boots. In my mind, I was Magic Johnson, but on the actual court, I was more like a figure skater. Cowboy boots don't necessarily provide the requisite grip or ankle support you might otherwise find in a standard basketball shoe. Basically, I was stumbling all over the place. At some point, the universal basketball bragging began. Everybody trying to demonstrate how they could replicate the moves of their favorite players. One guy shouted out, "Kareem!" as he slung up a skyhook. Another screamed out, "Bird!" throwing up a three. But this was Philadelphia in the early 80s. How dare they disrespect those Philly streets? There's only one name to yell out on these courts: Dr. J. Julius Irving. Actually, I do remember that as a kid. Like I remember my cousin coming over, my male cousin, and him like playing basketball, and him before, well, once he tries to go for a shot, them saying Dr. J. Yeah, so that was the thing back then. I do remember that. Dr. J was the shit back in the day. So I said, "Watch out, here comes the doc. Move, y'all, I'm about to dunk." Matt Brown bust out laughing. "Nigga, you can't dunk." Granted, I had never dunked before, but as soon as I said it, I believed it. As I made my way back to half court, I licked my fingers and wiped the bottom of my cowboy boots for traction. As I prepared to take a running start, I swear to the Almighty, I had no doubt I was about to dunk this ball. As I stretched my shoulder to prepare for full extension, the guys started throwing out bets. "I bet you $3 you can't do it, Will." "Bet," I clapped back. "Get my money ready." "I'm in for 5, somebody said. "I'll take all y'all's money. Bring it." And I'm agreeing to all of them because in my mind, this ball is already dunked. The guys all fan out. There's a moment of anticipation. I steady myself as the murmuring settles. And then boom, I take off running down the court. I see the Julius Irving rock the baby cradle dunk in the 1983 finals sweep against the Lakers. Cowboy boots clomping, feet flailing. I hit my stride, about to take off. I'm up. I'm flying. The cameras are flashing. The crowd is going crazy. And then silence. And somehow I'm falling backward. Something has gone wrong. Slam. Reality hits with the force of paved asphalt. I am not Julius Irving. I am out cold. The bigger the fantasy you live, the more painful the inevitable collision with reality. If you cultivate the fantasy that your marriage will be forever joyful and effortless, then reality is going to pay you back in equal proportion to your delusion. If you live the fantasy that making money will earn you love, then the universe will slap you awake in the tune of 1,000 angry voices. And if you think you can dunk like Julius Irving in cowboy boots, then gravitational reality will invoke a painful and divinely perfect retribution. Let's rewind and see what actually happened. I had clomped my way from half court All was still going well as I accelerated past the foul line. I took my last dribble. Liftoff was smooth, not perfect, but I was airborne. As I ascended, I got just high enough to hit the rim with the ball, completely halting my forward momentum, thereby causing my legs to fly out from under me. The slang terminology for this particular sporting mishap is hanging yourself on the rim. As I think back, the added weight of the cowboy boots may have exacerbated the torque. I came down hard, directly on the back of my head and neck, knocking myself unconscious. When I wake up, my friend Omar is standing over me. I could see the strobing lights of an ambulance. There's blood in my hair, and I have no idea where my left cowboy boot is. I could hear Omar's voice. He's awake. He's awake. Omar, my oldest friend, well, except for Stacy Brooks. When he was little, he was so pigeon-toed that he'd be tripping himself and falling and scuffing himself all the time when we were playing. His parents decided that he should have corrective surgery. When he was 5, the doctors broke both of his legs and reset them. Omar had leg braces all summer, but when it was time to go to school, all of a sudden, he was the fastest kid on the block and the best dancer. It made us all want the magical surgery. As my vision slowly sharpens, Omar's face slips into focus. I can see in his eyes that my fall must have been pretty bad. He isn't laughing, he's scared. Yo, man, you all right? I do a quick inventory. I can move my hands, my arms, my legs, my feet. Nothing broken. I muster an affirmative nod. As they strap me to the stretcher and slide me into the ambulance, I catch a final glimpse of Omar. Yo, oh, it went in, right? Make believe is a normal part of psychological development. But as we grow up, we start to let go of our fantasy life simply because we discover that living in the real world is more valuable to us than clinging to our fantasies. We have to learn how to deal with others, how to succeed at school and at work, how to survive in the material world. And it's hard to do that if you're unable to perceive reality accurately. As such, we all have to learn to make a distinction between what is real and what is not. In fact, some people make the distinction so well that as adults, they unfortunately lose the ability to embrace anything other than concrete material reality. But for some reason, I didn't go through this process. Or perhaps I refused to go through this process. That's because my fantasy life is what protected me from the world, offered the choice between the infinite playground of my imagination and a reality filled with constant threat. My mind chose fantasy. We all delude ourselves a little bit around the things that scare us. We're afraid of not being accepted by people at work or at school or on Twitter. So we convince ourselves that they're stuck up or ignorant or cruel. We concoct entire narratives about other people's lives when in fact we have no clue what they're thinking or feeling or struggling with. We invent these stories to protect ourselves. We imagine all sorts of things to be true about ourselves or the world, not because we've seen evidence for it, but because it's the only thing that keeps us from collapsing back into fear. Sometimes we rather blindfold ourselves than take a cold, hard look at the world exactly as it is. The problem is delusion works like poisoned honey. It tastes sweet in the beginning, but ultimately ends in sickness and misery. The stories we tell ourselves, which are designed for our protection, are the same stories that create the walls that prevent the very connections we so desperately crave. I told myself that I had a friend named Magicer because it made me feel less alone. But that fantasy was also a part of why I was disconnected from the other kids in the neighborhood. Later in my life, I would invent the fantasy that becoming rich and famous would solve all of the problems in my life. But the pursuit and maintenance of that fantasy only drove the people I loved further away from me. As a child, I told myself that if I kept Daddy-O entertained and made him laugh, then he wouldn't hurt my mother. But that fantasy only caused me to feel like a coward, an unworthy son, despite the fact that none of it was my fault. My fantasy life, while in some ways protected me, also caused me to feel more guilt and shame and more self-loathing. All fantasies eventually fail. No matter how hard you fight, the truth is undefeated. Reality remains the undisputed champ. All right, we only got a couple more pages to go, so just hang in there with me. Daddy-O only took one summer vacation in my entire childhood. When your family sells ice, you are trapped at work for the first week of June. When you get out of school, just after Labor Day when you go back. But in the summer of 1976, Daddy-O decided to take off 2 months, rent a camper, and drive the family cross country. There was a family reunion from Gigi's side in Los Angeles. We took the northern route out to LA and the southern route back to Philly. I have seen every nook and cranny of the United States of America. We left Philly and headed west to Pittsburgh to see my mom's childhood home. Her father, we called him Pap Pap, still lived there. He seemed like a really old version of Daddy-O. Legend had it that Pap Pap would get angry sometimes, so angry that his nose would bleed, and that could just be watching the Steelers. Next stop, Cleveland, to see Aunt Tootie and Uncle Walt. Then Chicago to the Great Lakes, then on to Minneapolis and the Dakotas. We saw prairie dogs, but I don't know why they call them that. They look like tall hamsters that stand upright. Think Timon from The Lion King. Harry got a handmade drum from a Sioux tribal leader in South Dakota. He banged that thing all the way through Mount Rushmore, the Devil's Tower, and into Yellowstone National Park. We saw Old Faithful. I cannot believe they could tell you down to the second exactly when it was going to erupt. The ranger would point, and then abracadabra, huge jets of boiling water shooting up out of the ground. The smell was nasty. Daddy-O said it was sulfur. I was glad to find that out because for a second I thought it was Ellen. My mom woke us up at sunrise on the top of a mountain in Wyoming. We were above the clouds. This is what heaven must feel like. But then we got stuck for an hour because a black bear walked out into the middle of the road and headed straight for our camper. It was a park rule that you had to turn off your vehicle if there was a bear within 50 feet of you. Daddy-O slammed the window closed with both hands. It's the only memory I have of him ever being scared of anything. After about 2 weeks, Daddy-O started commenting that this was the longest period in his life that he'd gone without seeing any black people. Apart from us, of course, we're black. Daddy-O was suffering from Negro Withdrawal Syndrome, or NWS. But one day at a rest stop in Wyoming, he saw a black couple driving away, and he chased them and pulled them over just to shake their hands and say hi. They thought it was very funny. Daddy-O drove all the way to the Craters of the Moon National Monument in Idaho. It looks just like the moon, and you actually feel like you're on it. He was exhausted, but my mom didn't want to be on the moon. She didn't feel comfortable there, so we never checked into the motel, and my mom drove us south to Salt Lake City. When Daddy-O woke up, he took us out into the Great Salt Lake. He explained how buoyancy works in salt water versus the fresh water of the Great Lakes. He showed us how it is easy to float. He made ice, so he knew everything about water. But the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my young life was the Grand Canyon. This entire canyon was carved by water, my mom said. I was in total awe, but I was too scared to approach the edge. I remember Peter Brady on the Brady Bunch also being amazed about how water could possibly make this canyon. Wow, he said. No wonder you don't like us to leave the water faucets dripping. And just when I thought the day couldn't get any better, Harry accidentally dropped his drum into the canyon. It seemed like it fell for about 3 days. I was so sick of hearing him bang that thing, it felt like the heavens had answered my prayers. This trip expanded and detonated my imagination. Every person we came across seemed like a new and fascinating character. Every destination was a dreamland, and I felt like life was just waiting for me to make up the story. The American landscape was so diverse and beautiful. There were mountains and prairies and valleys and whitewater rivers and regular deserts and painted deserts and green forests and petrified forests and corn into infinity and sequoias or redwoods, whichever ones we saw touching the sky, which was filled with sun sometimes and tornadoes in the distance and funny clouds and scary clouds and all the clouds in between. These were the best 8 weeks of my childhood. Everybody was happy. We were the perfect family. About a block away from the Woodcrest at the end of Graham Street, there was a known sex offender. All the kids in the neighborhood knew about him. and our parents told us to never go anywhere near his house. We rarely saw him. He was like a ghost or an urban legend. One day, I saw a little girl going up the front steps to his house. He was standing in the open doorway, inviting her in. My heart started pounding in my chest. I thought about calling out to her, but I froze. She was too far away and I could see him. I was terrified. I ran home, up the steps to my bedroom, and slammed the door. Nobody was supposed to go into that house. That was the bad man's house. Did he see me? Is he coming to get me? Needing to get as far away as possible, I hid in the closet, shaking. I could feel Magicker with me. You have to tell an adult, Will. But I can't. What if the man found out it was me? What if he tries to hurt me for telling on him? Will, go tell your parents right now. I can't. Will, go right now. But all I could do was curl up on the floor of the closet and cry. Will, get up. You have to go tell your parents. Magicker was angry now. He never got angry. You have to tell someone. You have to get up now. I closed my eyes and buried my head in my hands. I can't. Just like I couldn't face my father. Just like I couldn't face the neighborhood bullies. I couldn't even tell somebody that somebody else was potentially being hurt. What was wrong with me? Why was I always so afraid? Why was I such a coward? I just laid there trembling, ashamed, weak. Moments passed. I took my hands away from my eyes. Magicker was gone. There's a moment when your fantasies recede and you realize you are still you. Imaginary friends or dunking basketballs won't make the fear go away. They may help you to forget for a moment, but reality remains undefeated. Fortunately, someone else had seen the girl enter the house and had intervened. But what if they hadn't? I never saw Magicker again. And that's the end of chapter 2, Fantasy. Yo, this shit is deep. And Will Smith, he's something else. Like, again, I commend his courage, his bravery for admitting that he had the imaginary friend named Magicker, for admitting that he had this wild imagination, for admitting that he was a compulsive liar, all of that stuff. Like, he's really revealing the most darkest aspects of himself. Well, we don't know how much he's going to reveal further along, but yeah, I think it's really interesting so far. And again, I'm really engaged, engrossed in this book. I look forward to reading chapter 3. Let me just tell y'all what chapter 3 is called. And I'll be back in a few days to read chapter 3. So after fantasy, we have performance. So I guess he's going to get into when he first started performing as a rapper and things like that. But yeah, what do y'all think? Don't listen to them say this chapter was wild. I agree. CVMR said definitely not boring. Angela said I look forward to chapter 3. Siobhan said this is good. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to be to learn about that imaginary friend Magicker. Do you think that how about this? Do you think that by just some of the revelations, you think that he is, a little touch mentally? And remember, I started this live stream off with me saying that, I'm really recognizing that I'm a little touched too. I feel like we all got a little bit of craziness within us. And like I was saying, I feel like you got to be a little crazy to get like voluntary surgery. And Will was saying the same thing, like the bigger your dreams are, the more you're setting yourself up to be disappointed or to be hurt or whatever like that when reality sets in. But yeah, do y'all feel like he's dealing with some mental health issues, or do you feel like this was just a product of him going within, trying to escape his reality of being in an abusive household, basically at the hands of his father? Yup, Philly sure is a Scorpio city. Yup. Siobhan said he definitely mental. All geniuses are. Salome said, and he was white. You never hear that. Wait a minute, who? Oh, yeah, the imaginary friend. I thought that was telling too. He even described that he had a powder blue suit on, he had red hair. Very descriptive in terms of this imaginary friend. Yeah, I do feel like we all are a little crazy. Some of us are crazier than others. Yup. And I think it takes a lot of courage for you to admit that, yeah, you're a little touched in some ways. And basically, he's being very transparent about how, he's dealt with some emotional and mental health issues himself. And he said he still, is dealing with the fact that sometimes he just tells these lies. And where some people have to go to Jada and be like, okay, what really happened? So again, it's his defense mechanism. He said it's his coping mechanism from dealing with the harsh realities of life. And that's very much Moon conjoined to Neptune and Scorpio, him finding ways to cope with the trauma that he's experienced. So yeah. So I'm gonna leave y'all with that. Stay tuned for another chapter 3, performance. And this later on this week, I will be going live for the Aquarius season. Also, I want to do a live stream on Mars and Capricorn. I have more case studies that I want to put out. I'm going to start doing more shorter videos like how I did with the Yummy one and that other guy. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, there's a lot in the works. So just bear with me as, again, I go through this recovery. Some days are better than others. But I just want to thank everybody for riding with me. Y'all are ride or die. I love it. And y'all are patient with me. So I love that. So yeah, if you don't see me in a few days, you already know why. So consider joining my Patreon. If you need a reading, just go to my website. It's listed in the description section. Please like, share, and subscribe. I got to remember to say that for the newbies that are watching this. And yeah, I'll be back soon. Peace.